Hello, I'm Karen Stathoplos, and today I'm going to be reading a couple of stories. The first is a favorite in my family. My family was very big on reading aloud, and I don't just mean when we were little. My dad used to read S.J. Perelman, who, this is the first story, is by S.J. Perelman. And I'm going to read you first, before I read this little Hold That Christmas Tiger by S.J., a little bit of the introduction to this book, which is the most of S.J., by Dorothy Parker. Funnily enough, I didn't remember that. So this is a few words by Dorothy before S.J. It is a strange force that compels a writer to be a humorist. It is a strange force, if you care to go back further, that compels anyone to be a writer at all. But this is neither the time nor the place to bring up that matter. The writer's way is rough and lonely, and who would choose it while there are vacancies in more gracious professions, such as, say, cleaning out ferry boats? In all understatement, the author's lot is a hard one, and yet there are those who deliberately set out to make it harder for themselves. There are those who, in their pride and their innocence, dedicate their careers to writing humorous pieces. Poor dears. The world is stacked against them from the start, for everybody in it has the right to look at their work and say, I don't think that's funny. I had thought on starting this composition that I should define what humor means to me. However, every time I tried to, I had to go and lie down with a cold, wet cloth over my head. Still, here I go. Humor, heaven help me, takes in many things. There must be courage. There must be no awe. There must be criticism, for humor, to my mind, is encapsulated in criticism. There must be a disciplined eye and a wild mind. There must be a magnificent disregard of your reader, for if he cannot follow you, there's nothing you can do about it. There must be, in short, S.J. Perelman. Okay. And here is S.J.'s Hold That Christmas Tiger. About 10 years ago, there was translated to the screen, as a vessel for the talents of Warner Baxter, a play called I Loved You Wednesday. The result was an amiable little film which undoubtedly recovered its investment, earned a snug profit, and in the normal course of things was retired to be cut into mandolin picks. What makes it still verdant in the memory of connoisseurs, however, is a patch of dialogue that came about the end of the first reel. Mr. Baxter, in beautifully tailored breeches and cordovans, had been established as a construction engineer on a vast, unidentified power project, barking crisp commands at giant cranes and chivying steam shovels. The scene then dissolved to his home, and as the work-worn engineer entered, his wife looked up eagerly from her sewing. "What's new, dear?" she inquired. "Well, darling," replied Baxter, inhaling deeply and brushing clouds of alkali from his shoulders, "I just finished Boulder Dam." "Oh, Jim," murmured his wife adoringly. It may be presumptuous of me to compare myself in any sense with Mr. Baxter, but if sheer doggedness and fighting heart mean anything, the undertaking I have just completed may yet outclass his. At 10 o'clock this morning, fortified with a bottle of Benzedrine and a stoop of black coffee, I kissed my news dealer goodbye and set out to read through the Christmas party suggestions in Mademoiselle, Vogue, and Home and Garden. "It's madness, Derek," implored the handful of friends who had come down to see me off. "Think it over, old man. You'll never get through." I smiled grimly and set my jaw, as well as a serious case of malocclusion would allow, and plunged into the perfume advertising. Hours later, gray with fatigue and my eyes mere pinpoints in my head, I stumbled out of the back cover of House and Garden and fell forward into the waving arms of my friends. Perhaps the most soaring imagination displayed in any of the three magazines is that of a Mr. Lester Gaba, whom Mademoiselle called in to advise its readers regarding their Christmas decor. It is Mr. Gaba's thesis that, given a little energy and a few everyday materials, Christmas need never be stodgy. His first target is the tree itself. "Dip tips of twisted cotton strips into India ink and trim your tree entirely with ermine tails," he orders. "Pin a fresh mauve orchid to the treetop." Arresting as the effect might be, the actual execution seems a bit less simple. Well, what do we do next? I can hear Mr. Capuston asking his wife as he finishes tacking up the last holly wreath. Mrs. Capuston peers uncertainly at her copy of Mademoiselle. Tip dips of twisted croton tips. Oh, no, wait a minute. Sip dips of cristed totten tips. Obviously, such an enterprise can only end in disaster. Either Mr. Capuston, who is extremely short-tempered, snatches the magazine from his wife, thereby provoking a free-for-all, or the Don discloses two pallid housekeepers on the verge of a big breakdown, mumbling dip, dip, dip. Next, turning his attention to the lighting, Mr. Gaba says, go medieval. Get Gothic lantern effects by shielding ceiling bulbs with pierced rectangular tin food graters. It might be well to temper your enthusiasm for this novel hint with a pinch of caution, unless you want a dusky handmaiden mounted on a chair right in the middle of your party, grating carrots over the shoulders of your guests, and murmuring bitterly to herself in Gula. In the event you do, the best plan would be to sprinkle artificial snow around her feet and decorate her with festoons and candy canes. It is certainly just as feasible as another of Mr. Gaba's suggestions. Tie blown up red penny balloons to your outdoor Christmas trees. The kids in the block will pop them quick like a flash, but who cares? Who indeed, but in old Scrooge. I, for one, can think of no more diverting pastime than beating off stinging pellets from a bean blower while setting them up in the next alley for a little marksman. The same promise of high adventure pervades still another of Mr. Gaba's proposals. Decorate your mantel with a begged, borrowed, or stolen French horn filled cornucopia style with holly and mistletoe. No French horn player around Carnegie Hall will refuse to turn over his instrument to you once the purpose is explained to him. Should he prove reluctant, simply read him Mr. Gaba's article, and if that fails to stun him, sap him just below the left ear with a blackjack. Anybody so deficient in Christmas spirit is hardly worth your sympathy. Conscious of its august tradition, Vogue naturally scorns any such pinch-penny devices as the foregoing. Its article on the subject permits the reader to flatten his nose against the windows of several great houses and watch their occupants celebrate. Mrs. Frederick Frelinghausen, for example, occasionally masks all the curtains in great lengths of red mosquito netting. A mystifying rite, since there are surely no red mosquitoes in Mrs. Frelinghausen's well-ordered home. Who the devil Mrs. Frelinghausen is, I have no idea, but it is a cinch that she has a well-ordered home. Another family brews up an appalling mixture of port, brandy, burgundy, almonds, and raisins called glug, and then, I presume, proceeds to get quietly gluggy. A deeply religious bachelor, whose name is unfortunately not given, once set his Christmas table with all sorts of mechanical toys. As the guests entered the dining room, the wind-up toys began performing their mechanical tricks. The effect on the guests, already reeling with glug, must have been a curious one. Somehow, I have the feeling that everyone started turning handsprings, tearing down the smilax, and beating the tar out of the host, a thing he richly deserved. It was left to that ordinarily staid journal of gracious living, House and Garden, however, to emerge with the one truly brilliant inspiration of the season. An upside-down evergreen swung from the ceiling. To any human flies within the sound of my voice, here's an open invitation. Drop around at my flat whenever you like on Christmas Eve with your suction shoes and have a cup of glug on my ceiling. The Capustons will be there, and so will Mr. Gaba if he isn't tied up. You'll know me right away because my eyes will be so radiant, and besides, I'll have a fresh mauve orchid in my hair, to say nothing of Mademoiselle Vogue and House and Garden. Okay, now, before I read my next piece, because I discovered I have enough time, and it refers to SJ, I recently found a card my mom saved that I wrote to my mother and father December 22nd, 1988. We're a family that not only reads aloud, but we love writing cards, letters, stories. Mom saved this. and it gives you just, gives you an idea of what Christmas has been like for me. Merry Christmas, Mum and Dad. Gladsome tidings and what ho ho ho! How wildly rewarding to think of all the Christmases we have celebrated together. No matter where we've been, the spirit of Christmas shines bright and true. I remember making those white fluffy candles in Walpole and decorating spools with glitter and beads, the gingerbread man on the tree, putting up the manger, going for moonlit slides on the golf course, Fred Waring in The Night Before Christmas, Rudolph the Red-Nosed sitting on the heater in the hallway and listening to Mario Lanza sing, "Guardian Angels Around My Bed." What a crazy song. The Grinch, Rudolph on TV, reading Mr. Dog's Christmas and Eloise's Christmas, and the Christmas ghost that you cut out of a magazine for Lisa and I, making Christmas decorations for our room like mad. Then there was the Christmas in Manchester, when early in the wee morning hours I woke from a deep sleep on the couch that opened up in the upstairs hall and heard sleigh bells. I was so excited. Christmas in Chappaqua. Uncle Tony brought home chestnuts to roast on the open fire in the game room, but we forgot to cut slits in them, so they exploded all over the room. Then we woke early and stole downstairs to find the sheet over the living room entrance, a note from Santa, and all our stockings on the stairs. And little Miss Echo! After Mom had tried to convince me that there might not really be a Santa Claus, I knew she was kidding. Christmas at the inn, caroling cousins around the block, decorating the banister with greenery, making wassail, making ice cream. The Christmas we had an ice storm, and Dad was up on the roof trying to hack through the ice after he had to carry smoking logs out of the Franklin stove. Me singing carols at the top of the stairs because it was such a nice echo there. All the kids singing carols outside the adults' bedroom doors to get them up Christmas morning. Putting candles in all our windows, stringing popcorn and cranberries for the tree, making ginger beavers with syrup, and screaming when the raisins got too fat in the oven and they looked bug-eyed when we pulled them out. Reading S.J. aloud through uncontrollable hysterics. Christmas in the house on Route 1, caroling to Mr. and Mrs. Webb, Dad making coffee early, Robin's cranberry bread, Papoo opening presents, Dad saying, "Perfect," about each present he opened. Being happy to see all the Walpole ornaments on the tree, Sanchez the Christmas dog, Jen and Irwin, Sue's, any forlorn types without a big family celebration, coming to Mom and Dad's for festivities and scrumptiousness. Kim's first Christmas with us, playing dictionary, and him coming up with shit'em. The wood that Noah's Ark was made out of. Retsina, dictionary, Mia's handmade truffles, Lisa's chocolate roll, Todd carving the turkey, Dad reading S.J. aloud at the table, Mum's wreaths, Christmas carols, caramels, which reminds me of the first West Hartford Christmas. 6 people and a cat braving a fierce blizzard in a sob bug, wearing all of their clothes so that the presents would fit. Lisa, Karen, and Serp in the back, packed with presents up to their noses. Mom feeding Serp caramels because Serp couldn't smoke. Biver flicking his furry tail in our faces. Speeding through the toll booth, getting lost. Ferdinand as the baby Jesus in our Christmas play. Charades, roasted chestnuts, more charades, strawberry daiquiris, cribbage, 63, playing Aunt Billy and Uncle Tony's piano, walking around the block, Christmas caroling at a moment's notice. Every Christmas has been wonderful because we make it that way. I love every frolicsome, rewarding moment, every tradition we've started, and every one we've continued. Presents are fun, but it's the true spirit of Christmas that makes hearts glad. That is what I remember best and stays with us forever. I love you very much. Merry Christmas. Love, hugs, larks, and hollyberries. Karen. So let's see how we read S.J. in there. Now, this is a very short but rewarding little book that I bought from Shakespeare and Company, which is a wonderful bookstore in Paris. And it tells the story of a miracle that happened during World War I on Christmas. And it's called The Christmas Truce by Carol Ann Duffy. Christmas Eve in the trenches of France. The guns were quiet. The dead lay still in no man's land. Freddy, Franz, Friedrich, Frank. The moon like a medal hung in the clear, cold sky. Silver frost on barbed wire, strange tinsel sparkled and winked. A boy from Stroud stared at a star to meet his mother's eyesight there. An owl swooped on a rat on the glove of a corpse. In a copse of trees behind the lines, a lone bird sang. A soldier poet noted it down. A robin holding his winter ground. Then silence spread and touched each man like a hand. Somebody kissed the gold of his ring. A few lit pipes. Most in their great coats, huddled, waiting for sleep. The liquid mud had hardened at last in the freeze. But it was Christmas Eve. Belief thrilled the night air, where glittering rime on unburied suns treasured their stiff hair. The sharp, clean, midwinter smell held memory. On watch, a rifleman scoured the terrain. No sign of life, no shadows, shots from snipers. Nout to note or report. The frozen foreign fields were acres of pain. Then, flickering flames from the other side danced in his eyes, as Christmas trees in their dozens shone candlelit on the parapets, and they started to sing all down the German line. Men who would drown in mud, be gassed or shot or vaporized by falling shells, or live to tell, heard for the first time then, Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, alle schlaft, einsam wacht. Carried, the song was a sudden bridge from man to man, a gift to the heart from home or childhood, someplace shared. When it was done, the British soldiers cheered. A Scotsman started to bawl, "The first Noel," and all joined in till the Germans stood, seeing across the divide the sprawled mute shapes of those who had died. All night along the Western Front they sang the enemies, carols, hymns, folk songs, anthems, in German, English, French, each battalion choired in its grim trench. So Christmas dawned, wrapped in mist, to open itself and offer the day like a gift. For Harry, Hugo, Hermann, Henry, Heinz, with whistles, waves, cheers, shouts, laughs. Fröhliche Weihnachten, Tommy. Merry Christmas, Fritz. A young Berliner, brandishing schnapps, was the first from his ditch to climb. A Shropshire lad ran at him like a rhyme. Then it was up and over every man to shake the hand of a foe as a friend, or slap his back like a brother would, exchanging gifts of biscuits, tea, McConaughey's stew, Tickler's jam for cognac, sausages, cigars, beer, sauerkraut, or chase 6 hares who jumped from a cabbage patch, or find a ball and make of a battleground a football pitch. I showed him a picture of my wife. Ich zeige ihm ein Foto meiner Frau, sie seh's schon, sagte er. He thought her beautiful, he said. They buried the dead then, hacked spades into hard earth again and again, till a score of men were at rest, identified, blessed. Der Herr ist mein Hirt, my shepherd I shall not want. And all that marvelous festive day and night, they came and went, the officers, the rank and file, their fallen comrades side by side, beneath the makeshift crosses of midwinter graves, beneath the shivering, shy stars and the pinned moon and the yawn of history. The high bright bullets, which each man later only aimed at the sky.